Today we're going to be going over identifying our variables and what they mean in different situations. So you're given a verbal description, you could be given a scatter plot, so we're going to identify our variables. So first here we have when a tow truck is called, the cost of the service is $10 plus $1 per mile that the car must be towed. The towing company can tow a car up to 250 miles. So, when we go over, we want to make our equation. We know our equation is in the form of y equals mx plus b. So we know we need to identify our m and our b. But first, we're going to define our variables. So, given the situation, it's talking about a tow truck and the cost of a service. I want to know what my Y value is. My Y value will be the total cost of service. So it's going to be the total cost. My X value is going to be the number of miles or the mileage. Because when I plug in my equation and I plug in my variables, I'm finding out what my total cost is, and the variable that affects my total cost is the number of miles, which is why total cost is my Y value and number of miles is my X value. Now here I'm going to write my M and my B. I know that my M represents my slope and B represents Y-intercept. My slope is the rate of change. I can identify that with words like per, each, and every. And my y-intercept is my startup fee, one-time fee. It's where we begin. So 10 would represent my y-intercept because it's a service fee. And then it's $1 per mile. So 1 is my y-intercept. So my equation would be y equals x plus 10. And that identifies the total cost. Now we're going to go over to my table of values. So we know x is miles and y is the cost. Okay, so here we're going to scratch out domain and range. We're not worried about that right now. But here we have a table. We're going to fill in that table. In order for me to fill that table in, I'm going to substitute my x value for whatever x value is in the table. So where I have 10 instead of x, I'm going to substitute 10. So I have 10 plus 10, y equals 20. So when I'm being told 10 miles, the cost is going to be $20. So then for 25, the cost is going to be $35. 110, 185, and 260. Okay. Now I'm going to plot points on my graph, but first I'm going to identify what my axes are. So here I have miles for my x-axis. And then I have my cost for my y-axis. So before I can plot any points, I need to create my scale. So for my scale for my x-axis, I'm going to go by 5. So that's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 35, 45, and so on and so forth, right? So my x-axis is going by 5. My y-axis is going to go by 10. So 10, 30, 50, 70, 90, 110, 130, 150. Okay. So now I'm going to plot my points. When x is 10, y is 20. So I'm going to plot a point there. When x is 0, y is 10. When x is 25, y is 35. But in order for me to plot my points, I also can use my change in y, my rise over run, which is change in y over change in x. So I'm going to show that. So you go up 1 over 2 because it's really up 10 over 10. Up 10 over 10, plot a point. Up 10 over 10, plot a point. Up 10 over 10, plot a point. And then I can just create my line from there. And we went up 10 and over 10 because 10 over 10 gives us 1. And our slope is 1. So you identified your y variable, you've identified your x variable, you've written your equation, and you've also created a table and a graph given this information. Now we can go ahead and answer some prediction questions. So here we have a prediction question. It says, determine how much it will cost to tow a vehicle that's 78 miles. So remember our equation is y equals x plus 10. Remember that x is equal to your mileage and y is equal to the total cost. Okay, so I want to determine how much it will cost to tow a vehicle that's 78 miles away. So I'm going to substitute 78 for my x value. So that'd be 78 plus 10. So y is equal to 88. So it will cost $88. Next, it says how many miles would a vehicle have been towed if the bill was $45? So I have my equation. We're going to extend the page a little bit. So my equation is y equals x plus, but we want to know how many miles. So that means we're looking for our x value. Since I'm looking for my x value, I'm substituting 45 for y because that's the total cost. The bill was $45, so that goes to your y value. So it's going to be 45 equal to x plus 10. And now I'm going to solve for x. So I'm going to subtract my constant on both sides. And then I get 35 is equal to x. So that means they drove or towed the car 35 miles. So it's important to know what your variables represent so that when you're given a scatter plot or a trend line question or prediction, you're making a prediction using a trend line, but you have to know what your variables represent so that you substitute the numbers in the correct spots. So next we have, suppose a town has a population of 5,000 residents, but that population is decreasing by 200 people per year. I want to identify what my variables are. Y represents the total population. Okay, so we have your total population. And X represents the years. So X represents the years that have passed, how many years have passed, and Y represents your total population. So now we can write our equation. We know M is equal to our slope and B is equal to our y-intercept. So the town starts with 5,000 residents, but it's decreasing by 200 people per year, so that's negative 200. So our equation will be y equals negative 200 x plus 5,000. Now that I have my equation, let's say this equation represents a trend line. So now it says after 6 years, what will the population of the town be? So we know that years represents the x value, so the x variable. So we will substitute 6 where we see x. So that's y is equal to negative 200 times 6 plus 5,000. And I am just going to simply solve that. So y is equal to negative 1,200 plus 5,000. And our answer is 3,800. So there will be 3,800 people left in town after 6 years. Then next, it says how many years did it take to reach a population of 1,600? So you have your equation, y equals negative 200x plus 5,000. Then you substitute 1,600 in for your y value because we are looking for the number of years. And I'm going to solve for x. So first I'm going to subtract my coefficient, which is 5,000. Once I subtract my coefficient from my y value, we get negative 3,400 is equal to negative 200x. Next, I am going to divide by my coefficient, which is negative 200. I'm going to divide by negative 200 on both sides. X is equal to 17. So it takes 17 years for the population to reach 1,600 people. Go ahead and complete your assignment for today.